Hey, how's it going? It's Meg from Black City Coffee. I'm on another coffee break again, so I wanted to make a video about why I only sell or will sell only light roasted coffee. And we're gonna compare and talk about dark roasted coffee, which has been favored for a long time, thanks to Starbucks, and talk about light roasted coffee. We're also gonna brew coffee today, and we're gonna do it pour over style, and I'll show you how I do that. Come on and join me. Let's take a coffee break together. First and foremost, while my water heats up, ooh, wow, that smells great. This is light roasted coffee. Now, what is light roasted? So light roasted meaning there's sort of a scale that after coffee has reached its cooked point, like it's ready to consume or brew. Ooh, that's getting hot. There's a range, and it goes kind of like by color and development and a lot of things, which is too complicated to get into this video, but let's just go by color. So we have our light roasted coffee here. It can be a little bit lighter or even a little bit darker than this, and this will land in the spectrum of what we would call light roasted coffee or city roast coffee, hence the name Black City. Now let's compare this to I kept this as my very first batch that I roasted on my roaster, where I had no idea what I was doing, even though I was following directions. Let's compare and contrast that, okay? By looking at these two, we have our light roasted from Rwanda, and we have our dark roasted from Colombia. Okay, a lot of you may have heard this, Arabica beans from Colombia. That's what this is right here. This is actually, look on the label. Bourbon, yeah, Bourbon. Okay, so this is Bourbon, that varietal. You may have heard that too. That's pretty lesser known, okay? So as you can tell from the color, we have the light roasted here. That chaff, kind of like a silver skin, is still kind of like wrapped up within the bean. It has a very matte finish. It's not shiny compared to the darker roast. It's not as enlarged as the darker roast. The darker roast has larger beans because it has more time to roast or cook, and so it keeps filling with air, and so the bean keeps expanding. If I were to keep roasting this until it was black, you would see it would just puff up like a big old corn puff. It's kind of cool to see. But as you can tell, like, the chaff has completely left the inside of this bean. Also, you can tell that it's very shiny, and that comes from the oils that are within the coffee. And because you've roasted it so long into the dark roast, which means like French roast or, what's the other term? I forget, but it's dark, right? Those oils are kept inside, and that's where a lot of flavor comes from. But when you roast it to this state, they come to the outside, they start bubbling out. They continuously start bubbling out. And that means actually that it's losing a lot of those complex flavors and notes, like the brighter notes, the more subtle notes, the more floral notes, and it starts to get more sweeter in terms of, not like chocolate sweet, but sweeter in terms of spectrum and flavor. So there's kind of like a scale. How it was explained to me is that you can have peak acidity and you can have peak sweetness. You can't have both at the same time. You have to kind of find a middle way in between. When you light roast coffee, that's effectively what you're trying to do. You're trying to find a balance between peak acidity and peak sweetness. And somewhere in between that line, due to the roaster's own skill, also where the bean comes from, where what the terroir is, like how it was grown, when it was harvested. Was it harvested at peak ripeness, or did you pick a green cherry instead of a red cherry? Red cherry's ripe, right? So a lot goes into what we call the journey into the perfect bean or the perfect cup of coffee. And a lot of errors can be made, but that's kind of the fun of it. It's like, oh, Meg, it sounds like you're explaining all these obstacles that get in the way of me actually understanding what you're saying and getting a good cup of coffee. No, it's very, very, very nuanced. And when you start to dive in a little bit into coffee, into the coffee world like I am right now, which is really interesting, I actually don't shy away from that because I love it and because I love consuming this. It's just an opportunity. I feel special learning about it every time I learn something new, or even if I see the difference. Okay, so I'm definitely not drinking this. It's probably super stale, super old. I just keep it for dexterity so I can look at it and go, Remember the time when I used to burn the hell out of the beans? I mean, they look cool, they look fine, and if you didn't know anything about coffee, you'd probably say, ooh, that's a strong cup of coffee right there. I believe that's why people, I think, tend to like dark roasts, and it's because, I think subconsciously, because I thought this too. I'm a strong person or gal, and I only want strong stuff because I want to associate myself with strong stuff. And I want the strongest cup of coffee, you know, I can take it, I can handle it, that sort of attitude. So vis-a-vis, if I were to drink a light roasted coffee, subconsciously, my black and white mind would go, ooh, I don't like to drink light coffee. I'm not a weak person. Like, light is weak, right? Like, there's not a lot of caffeine in that, right? Like, that's false. I'll have you know. Like, I subconsciously thought that. I didn't be like, you know, light coffee, bad, weak, win. You know, I didn't think so much in those terms, but I think subconsciously we do think like that. I think it's like with any type of marketing, we want to associate our stuff with what we think is cool or what we approve of, you know, or how we would like to see ourselves. And so if we don't understand a certain something like about light coffee and know like the reason why there's this popularity of light roasted coffee and specialty coffee is because it's taken so much for it to get to this point, and if you roast the hell out of it like this, you're basically stomping on all the hard work of the roaster and the bean and where it comes from. That's the argument, which I agree, because I was a long time drinker of dark roast, and I just thought this is all that coffee had to offer me until I did taste Ethiopian coffee, and at first I was turned off. I was like, this is not my coffee. This is not what I am used to. And that's all it was. I just wasn't used to it. And I was still putting cream and sugar in my coffee at the time. By the time I started to just drink it black and open my mind and myself up to, okay, well, this tastes different. I love coffee. So it just seemed like a natural bridge for me to cross and just to keep exploring new flavors. And I even subscribed to like one of those coffee subscriptions so I could be like, if Ethiopia tastes like this, then what does South America taste like? So for those of you who are venturing into light roasted coffee for the first time, you know, give it some time, be patient. Like all things that change, they require a little bit of transition period, you know? And give yourself the opportunity to taste something that you've never tasted before. If I can make the analogy of like, it's like going to sushi and having really, really high quality sushi, and having omakase, which is chef's choice, right? Chef's choice. In a way, they're artists and they've prepared their art for you a certain way to be consumed. And if you don't do it that way and you dip your sushi in a bunch of soy sauce and wasabi and just drown it and muddle all the subtlety of flavor, it's like a big slap in the face. It's very disrespectful. And it's like, then just go buy freaking, you know, Carl's Jr. and get out of my face. Let's do this. I always smell my coffee before I brew it because it just prepares you. It just gets you ready to consume. And you know what? I feel like high quality coffee like this is one of life's finer things, one of the finer things in life. And when you get to do that every day and you give yourself the opportunity to do that every day, like, it's special, you know? So we're not gonna brew a whole thing. We're probably gonna brew like half, because I just want to move on. So I usually put a little hole like that for me, just a little bit guide. And what we're going to do now is bloom the coffee. And to do pour over, you should have a gooseneck kettle so you can have complete control. You see how the coffee is inflating like that? Because it's fresh, and so it has a lot of air in there. You know, my bloom would be a lot better if I actually had like 2 tablespoons worth of coffee in here. Okay. So that's what I'm looking for first. I want to wet all the coffee grounds because the point of doing pour over is, one, to take time with your coffee, but two, the trick and the skill involved in doing pour over, and it's a slower process, is that you want to have an even extraction. So I actually have refined my pour over technique from a YouTuber called Chris Baca, very good content creator and one of the owners of Cat and Cloud Coffee. And so he would say, you know, you're looking for that color change. And with this amount of coffee, only 1 tablespoon, we're gonna probably use about half of the amount of water that I normally use. And we don't want to hit the sides of the filter. It wasn't the best, but another thing you're looking for is to, some people use a spoon and kind of like scrape down the sides and stuff. I actually don't do that. What you're looking for is a nice flat surface of coffee grounds that has been evenly extracted. If you have this volcano, like an inverse volcano effect going on, then it definitely wasn't extracted evenly. I have a little bit of that going on right now. Okay, cool. So I've got half a cup of coffee. That looks good. This would be like a flat bed, and there would be little to none grounds on the side of the filter. But that's why we have always tomorrow, right? It's not like it's gonna be a terrible cup of coffee, right? But that's the thing. When you get to this level, that's the type of stuff that just excites you. You're like, ooh, I'm gonna get it good next time. You know? Okay. So we let that rest, and I'm letting it rest on this thing, which is, it's really handy to have something like this. It's pretty cool. Throw away water, hold stuff, brew a lot of coffee, whatever, what have you. Okay, so here we go. Here's our nice cup of Black City coffee, Rwanda. Well, let's read off the stuff right here. City roast, right? Light roast, synonymous. It's a Bourbon, and the tasting notes are like grape, marshmallow, and chocolatey. But let's see what we taste now on a fresh taste. But this is pretty hot, so let's let that cool a little bit. That's my thoughts about, you know, light roasted coffee versus dark roasted. I think dark roasted, you know, some people just really like it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging you completely. But if you want something more nuanced, if you want to really see what and taste what coffee has to offer, because it is super complex, and that's really my main thing. It's like, I would just like people to open their minds to the idea of light roasted coffee and not be choosing dark roasted coffee for the wrong reasons. That's really what I want to say with this video, because I did the same thing. You know, it's like, oh, dark roast coffee because I'm a dark-souled, strong person and I need the most caffeine. And actually, this has gone back and forth. It's even gone in a way where they say that light roasted coffee has more caffeine because you haven't cooked all the caffeine out of it, right? I don't know if that's true or not. Yeah, I just want people to choose coffee for the right reasons and have a better understanding of where good coffee comes from. And I think if more people are educated, then we can keep continuing this attitude of treating coffee the way it should be treated, which means rewarding the farmers and taking care of the farmers who actually grow this stuff, which is pretty poor conditions. So all in all, it goes back to making sure that the people who are producing this, who probably don't even get to try their own coffee, their own harvest, are taken care of. I think if we can bring more attention to that, not in the way that we've kind of been doing, which is like, it's like the benefit is all for us in the States or for a higher class country or a more income friendly country. But I don't know. I mean, that's, you know, I don't want to be too idealistic and non-realistic, but that's just how I feel. I feel if we give more respect to it, or we understand where it comes from, and we appreciate where good coffee comes from hard work, you know, then we could maybe transfer the same attitude into other things. Who knows? Everything is connected. Okay. Let's try this goddamn coffee, okay? Ooh. Ooh. Mm-hmm.